welcome back to my channel Talking Clarity. It's me Seher with another video for you guys. So this time my video is all about the books that I have on my 2020 list, and you can say that I am going to incorporate these books in my isolation hall as well, because I mean, you need time for reading books, right? And time is something that we all have nowadays. So I just wanted to make a video about all the books that I do have on my list. I have written down all the books that I have in my list because I have them in my phone usually, but I jot them down. So I just wanted to tell you guys that the process, like for me, for getting a book into my list is actually there are 3 or 4 different ways how I incorporate a book into my list, right? So I did mention this in my previous video. If you guys haven't watched, do give it a look. Um, that was I got out of touch with reading, and then I decided to get back into reading. And as a part of that, most of last year was spent just trying to have a number of books in my list so that I could start with it. And the way that I choose books is um, I get the book recommendations from some of the Instagram people influencers that I follow, or YouTubers that I follow, and if they suggest a book, the influencers that I like, if they suggest a book, I do go ahead and put that in my list. Another way is just if it pops up like a lot, if it's trendy, if I've seen it all over the place, and if it's something that interests me, I will jot that down into my list. So the books that I am usually interested in, are both fiction and nonfiction. When it comes to fiction, I love a good story that is a mix between some lighthearted lighthearted comedy, as well as like a love story, and I like to go for things like that. And then another genre that I like is thrill and suspense. So if it has those kind of themes in it, I do like it. Another genre that I have been really into lately is self-help books. For some reason, I have been just like all about self-help books. I want to get to know what different people think about, how to improve your life, how to improve your day, your habits, all of that kind of stuff. I'm really into all of that kind of stuff. So I do incorporate those books as well. Um, I am really happy to say that ever since 2020 has begun, I have read 2 books so far, and I'm on my current read. So including the current book that I am reading and the rest of the books, I have 10 in my book list. So I have my journal right here with me. So if you guys see me looking down, it's just because I want to tell you the title of the book. So let me just start out by saying that the 2 books that I did read were Eleanor Elephant is Completely Fine by, I'm so sorry, I forgot the author's name. Eleanor Elephant is Completely Fine. And then also, oh yeah, Eleanor Elephant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeymoon. And the other book that I read was by Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic. I heard so much about it, so I definitely give that a read. If you guys want to know what I think about, I did give a review about Eleanor Oliphant. It was my first ever video on YouTube. So if you guys want to look at that, you can. And then Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic is a sort of a self-help book, and I did like it. The funny thing about that book is that I didn't know that Elizabeth Gilbert is the one who wrote the book Eat, Pray, and Love. I had watched that movie before, with Julia Roberts in it. I never thought that that was about Elizabeth Gilbert. So automatically, when I read um, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, I went ahead and I watched the movie again, Eat, Pray, and Love. And so I really liked the way that she writes books. So another book that I incorporated in my list is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. So that is another book that I am planning on reading. And it's just, I liked Elizabeth Gilbert's book that I did read, and so I was looking for another book by her. And this is, I think, the fairly newest book that she's introduced in recent times, so that is another book that I'm going to read. Um, I don't know the story of it, but I just like the author, and so I incorporated that. Another book that is inspired by Elizabeth Gilbert as well is To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, I know that To Kill a Mockingbird is a fairly, it's a fairly established book, and the reason why I mentioned that Elizabeth Gilbert is the reason why I'm reading it is that there was actually a phrase in her book Big Magic of how she was saying that the gist of it is that sometimes fear can get to you so much, and then that fear kind of stops you from doing what you like or what you love. And she mentioned that, like Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, the author never produced a book after To Kill a Mockingbird because it was so popularized and it was so well known that I think, according to her, the author just never got out of the fear of whether or not her second book would be as great as To Kill a Mockingbird. And To Kill a Mockingbird had been on my mind for some time, but then when she mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, I want to read that book too. So I put it in my list. So that is the second book that I have on my list, To Kill a Mockingbird. All right, so besides those two books, the third book that I have on my list is Courage to be Disliked. So this is a book that I got inspired from by one of the Instagram influencers that I follow. Um, I love this woman. I love her work on Instagram. She is a content creator and she does all work about, her work life balance, and she reads a lot of books. So most of the time, if she gives, like an Instagram story about a book that she's reading and I feel that this is something that I may like, I include it in my list. So The Courage to be Disliked is for sure one of those books that I saw her reading, and the title caught my eye. I mean, The Courage to be Disliked. That just stuck into my mind because we all have so many fears of being disliked, especially if you're a people pleaser. I am I'm a big people pleaser. I'm not proud of it, but it is something that I do. And this seemed like a really good book to incorporate in my list. So um, it's another book that I have added into my list, and I am going to be reading it. It actually is, and I went through the summaries of the book, and it's actually about these three psychologists, Alfred Adler, Jung, and Freud, and some of their point of views on life. So this is going to be an interesting read. So if you're into that sort of thing, maybe it's something that you can look up as well. Uh, the fourth book that I have on my list is House at the Bottom of the Lake. So House at the Bottom of the Lake is actually by Josh Malerman. And if you have watched Bird Box on Netflix, Bird Box is actually an adaptation from a novel, and that novel is written by Josh Malerman. And I didn't know that this was like, related to Bird Box. Actually, this is another one of those books that I got inspired by one of my Instagram um, influencers that I follow. And she had read Eleanor Elephant is Completely Fine, and then she was reading this. And she mentioned it, and I was like, a house at the bottom of the lake. That sounds kind of like, mystery. And then when I read about it, it is actually, by the same guy who's written Bird Box. And Bird Box, I mean, if you guys have not seen Bird Box, you should go and you should watch it because that movie is ugh, it's wow. It's one of those movies that kind of really got me into it, and I didn't even have to skip through it. So yeah, so Bird Box definitely was a very it was, is one of those movies that I really like. And then when I found out that House at the Bottom of the Lake is by the same guy, I had to put it in my list. So that's another one of my books. Um, the fifth book that I have is Becoming Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama, Becoming Michelle Obama. It's her memoir, and I think it's one of those books that saw on social media quite a lot, and then I wanted to incorporate a memoir into my list because like I said, I'm mostly into self-help books. I'm mostly into like nonfiction. So I think I wanted to kind of spice up my book list and add something new to it. So this is definitely something that I incorporate in it just for to see if I can, read a new genre. So this is another book that's in my list. All right, so the two other books that I have on my list. Okay, I really don't know which number I am on right now, so I'm just gonna tell you guys. The Meaning of Life by Viktor Frankl is a book that I saw some of my class fellows reading back when I was in university, and they had mentioned that it was quite a good book. I was really not into reading back then, but that name kind of stuck with me, and I added it to my list. It is his reflection on life and what he thinks one's attitude should be towards life. So again, it's related to life, and I just added it to my list. Another book that I have in my 2020 book list is 50 Shades of Feminism. Um, this is also influenced by one of my influencers that I follow on Instagram, and it's basically women's thought on feminism. And I like that topic, so I wanted to read it as well. There are three other books that I have on my book list that I added fairly recently. Like, I think just about a week ago, I had a friend and she was asking her friends on Instagram for some good recommendations. And these are the three names that stood out for me. And I was like, okay, this is something that, needs to be looked at. So the first one is God's Delusion by Richard Dawkins. It's all about how he believes um, what the perception of God is. And I just think it's a very different topic that I can read about and probably like, learn something new. And the other book is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And like I said, I am all about trying to get good habits into my life. And I think this is going to be a book that can help me with that. And the other one is Start with Why by Simon Sinek or Sinek. And that also just like, start with why. That's interesting. I mean, I want to think about that. So I added that to my list as well. So yeah, so these are all the books that I have in my list. The Courage to be Disliked, House at the Bottom of the Lake, Becoming Michelle Obama, City of Girls, Meaning of Life by Viktor Frankl, 50 Shades of Feminism, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. One book that I forgot to mention was Good Vibes, Good Life by Vex King. And it's a book that I came across while watching a YouTuber, Laura Leth Lifestyle. She mentioned it in one of her videos, and it seemed like a pretty inspirational book, so I just jotted that down into my list as well. The other book is God's Delusion by Richard Dawkins, Atomic Habits by James Clear, and Start with Why by Simon Sinek. And the current book that I am reading right now is HSP by Elaine Aron, Highly Sensitive Person. This is a book that I had heard about so much just because I've always thought of myself as a highly sensitive person and I wanted to understand it more. And I will tell you this, that it's quite an interesting book. It has kind of helped me with a lot of things as, seeming like a revelation towards myself and my personality. So it's going pretty good so far, and hopefully after I read it, I can give you guys a better insight into the book. But yeah, these are the books that I have on my 2020 list of books to read, and this is the perfect time to read books. I mean, if you guys are into reading, you should definitely give some of these books a try. And if you've already read some of those books, be sure to comment down in the section below and tell me how you guys liked any of these books. And if you guys have any other recommendations that, kind of suit the genre that I like and you guys think that I should read them, you should also mention that in the section down below, and be sure to like and subscribe and just have a good time, guys. Bye.